fired on Christmas Eve after securing $102 million, so I left a gift in the project files they missed. Have you ever wondered what happens when loyalty becomes a weapon? When 7 years of dedication gets repaid with a single email that destroys everything you've built? When the people who can't spell revenue without you decide you're suddenly disposable? I'm about to show you. Picture this, it's 4:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. You're packing up your corner office, thinking about holiday plans, when your inbox pings with the email that changes everything. Dear Maggie Cooper, effective immediately, your position as lead software architect at Pioneer Analytics has been eliminated as part of our strategic restructuring initiative. Your access will be terminated at 5 p.m. today. Please return all company property to HR. No signature. No explanation. Just a corporate form letter that reduced 7 years of my life to a single paragraph. But here's what makes this story different from every other toxic workplace tale you've heard. I saw this coming. And I'd already prepared a Christmas gift they'd never forget. I stared at the screen, watching snow blur the city skyline outside my corner office window. 7 Christmases I'd worked through while Frank spent them in Aspen. The nights I'd stayed until 3 a.m. debugging code while he took credit in morning meetings. The anniversary dinner I'd missed last month because of his critical deadline, the same night he posted Instagram photos from his wine tasting event. They wanted my work, but not me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Christmas Eve. The night of gifts. And I was about to give Pioneer Analytics the biggest gift of all, one they'd never see coming. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. There was still time to make one final adjustment to the code base. But first, I needed to understand exactly what had just happened to me. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been the golden child of Pioneer Analytics. CEO Frank Dalton had personally flown me to San Francisco to pitch our new real-time analytics platform to Westbridge Capital, a major investment firm looking to modernize their data infrastructure. The presentation was flawless. Our platform could process millions of transactions per second, providing instant insights that would revolutionize their trading algorithms. The client was mesmerized by the demo, watching as our system analyzed market patterns in real time with stunning accuracy. This is exactly what we need, their CTO had whispered to me during the break. When can we go live? I'd built that platform from the ground up. Every line of code, every algorithm, every optimization, it was my creation. But during the pitch, Frank had barely acknowledged my contributions, taking credit for the vision, while I handled the technical heavy lifting. The $102 million contract was signed on the spot. Westbridge wanted to launch by January 3rd, an aggressive timeline that would require perfect execution. Back in Chicago, Frank had called an all-hands meeting. This deal will make us a unicorn, he'd announced, chest puffed with pride. We're going to be the next big thing in fintech. I'd raised my hand. Frank, we need to address the stress testing results. There's a potential bottleneck in the activation sequence that could impact performance under full load. Maggie, he nodded thoughtfully, then glanced at the room full of eager faces. I appreciate the thoroughness. But we've got 47 employees counting on this launch for their year-end bonuses. Our runway gets us to March. If we delay launch for optimization, we might not have a company to optimize. Let's document that for post-launch iteration and stay focused on delivery. The room had nodded in agreement. Frank wasn't being malicious, he was being pragmatic. But pragmatism with other people's technical debt had a way of becoming someone else's crisis. But it wasn't minor. And now I was about to find out exactly how major it really was. Quick pause here. If you're enjoying this story of corporate justice, hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace revenge tales. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. I called it Rudolph, a load balancing module designed to prevent system overload during peak usage. It was legitimate code with a legitimate purpose, but with one critical flaw: the threshold calculations were based on our testing environment, not real-world conditions. In development, with simulated data, Rudolph performed exactly as designed. In code review, it passed inspection because the logic was sound and the documentation was thorough. But I knew something the reviewers didn't. Westbridge's actual data volume would be triple our test scenarios. I'd flagged this discrepancy in 5 separate reports, each time requesting permission to recalibrate the thresholds. Each time, Frank had marked it defer to post-launch, because fixing it would require 3 weeks of testing, 3 weeks we didn't have before the January deadline. The module wasn't sabotage. It was technical debt with a timer attached. I'd tried to fix it. Repeatedly. But Frank and the board were too focused on the investor hype to listen to technical concerns. Ship it and iterate, Frank had said. We'll patch it later. Now, staring at my termination email, I realized they'd never intended to let me patch anything. They'd gotten what they needed from me, the deal, the platform, the client relationship. The technical debt could be someone else's problem. As I sat in my empty office, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened the codebase one final time. Rudolph was still there, waiting patiently in the shadows. All I had to do was leave it exactly where it was. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I could fix it right now, 15 minutes of work, maybe 20. Save the company, save the deal, save Frank's reputation. But then I remembered his dismissive nod in the board meeting. The way he'd cut me off. 7 years of loyalty rewarded with a form letter termination. After all, I'd documented the risks. Management had chosen to ignore them. My access would terminate at 5 p.m. sharp. I had 13 minutes to make my exit graceful, or memorable. I started with the obvious, copying my personal files, clearing my browser history, logging out of all accounts. But as I worked, my mind raced through the implications of what I was about to do. Was I sabotaging the company? Technically, no. Rudolph was already in the code, approved by multiple reviews. I wasn't adding anything malicious, I was simply choosing not to fix a problem they'd repeatedly ignored. Was it ethical? That was harder to answer. But as I thought about the 7 years of unpaid overtime, the promises of equity that never materialized, the way Frank had frozen me out of the very deal I'd made possible, my moral compass started pointing in a different direction. At 4:55, I sent a final email to the development team. Happy holidays, everyone. The platform is ready for deployment. All known issues have been documented in the project files. Good luck with the launch. I hit send, grabbed my coffee mug. The one with the world's best coder, that Lucy had given me for my birthday, and walked toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Frank through his glass office walls. He was on the phone, probably discussing my replacement. He looked up and our eyes met for a split second. He had no idea what was coming. The elevator descended, carrying me away from Pioneer Analytics forever. But part of me, the part that knew exactly how their system worked, was staying behind. I woke up Christmas morning in my Lincoln Park apartment, surrounded by the aftermath of my own private pity party. Empty wine bottles, crumpled tissues, and my laptop showing 17 missed calls from my parents. The reality hit me like a Chicago winter wind. I was unemployed. At 34, with no savings to speak of, no backup plan, and a reputation that would be shredded the moment Pioneer's launch inevitably failed. But as I made coffee and watched the snow fall, something else crystallized in my mind. For the first time in 7 years, I wasn't thinking about Pioneer's problems. I wasn't mentally debugging their code or worrying about their deadlines. I was free. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucy Parker, my best friend since college, saw the news on LinkedIn. Coffee? I have ideas. Lucy worked in creative strategy at a boutique marketing firm. She'd been telling me for years that I should start my own company, but I'd always been too comfortable, or too scared, to take the leap. I wasn't in the mood for her entrepreneurial pep talks. I texted back, thanks, but I just want to sulk and drink wine. One coffee. One conversation. If you hate my idea, I'll buy the wine. Despite myself, I smiled. Lucy never took no for an answer. Meet me at Café Integral in an hour, I finally replied. But I'm warning you. I'm not in a seize the day mood. As I got dressed, I couldn't help but smile. Pioneer's launch was 9 days away. Frank and his team would be spending their holidays scrambling to ensure everything went perfectly. But as I pulled on my coat, a darker thought crept in. Was I really just letting natural consequences unfold, or was I crossing a line? 47 people worked at Pioneer, good people who had nothing to do with Frank's ego or my wounded pride. I pushed the thought away. I'd done my job. I'd documented the risks. Management had made their choice. They had no idea that their biggest problem was already gift-wrapped and waiting under the tree. New Year's Eve arrived with a blizzard that blanketed Chicago in 2 feet of snow. While the city partied, I spent the evening in my apartment, monitoring Pioneer's pre-launch communications through industry channels and social media. Frank had been busy. Press releases. Media interviews. A glossy video tour of their revolutionary platform. In every interview, he positioned himself as the visionary behind the breakthrough, mentioning the development team only in passing. We've assembled the best talent in the industry, he'd told TechCrunch. This platform represents the future of real-time analytics. The best talent. Past tense. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Cole Bennett, one of the few people at Pioneer I still trusted. He was calling from what sounded like a very loud party. Maggie. I can't believe they let you go. This is insane. It's business, Cole. I'll survive. No, you don't understand. The dev team is freaking out. Nobody knows your code like you do. Frank hired 3 contractors to replace you, but they're drowning. The launch is in 3 days and the line went dead. Either his phone died or someone had told him to hang up. I set my phone aside and opened a bottle of champagne. At midnight, as fireworks lit up the frozen skyline, I raised a toast to new beginnings. 3 days until Pioneer's launch. 3 days until Frank learned the difference between vision and execution. 3 days until Rudolph woke up from his long winter's nap. January 3rd dawned gray and bitter, typical Chicago winter weather. I watched the morning news from my couch, coffee in hand, as the business segment featured a live interview with Frank Dalton. Today marks a pivotal moment for Pioneer Analytics, Frank declared, his smile practiced and confident. We're not just launching a product, we're launching the future of financial technology. The reporter asked about the aggressive timeline. Frank's smile never wavered. When you have the right team and the right vision, extraordinary things are possible. Our platform has been rigorously tested and is ready for prime time. I muted the TV and opened my laptop. Pioneer's launch was scheduled for 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. I had monitoring tools that would let me track system performance from the outside, nothing illegal, just publicly available metrics and response times. At 12:03 p.m., Pioneer Analytics went live with Westbridge Capital. The initial numbers looked perfect. Response times were excellent, throughput was within expected parameters, and the dashboards displayed beautiful, real-time data visualizations. Frank was probably popping champagne right about now. I made myself a sandwich and waited. Rudolph was a patient creature. He wouldn't stir until the system reached full operational capacity, something that would happen gradually as Westbridge's traders began their afternoon sessions. At 2:17 p.m., I noticed the first hiccup. A slight increase in response times. Nothing dramatic, just a few milliseconds here and there. At 2:34 p.m., the first error message appeared in the system logs. At 2:45 p.m., my phone started ringing. The caller ID showed Cole Bennett. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back. Maggie, it's Cole. I know you're probably not taking calls from Pioneer people right now, but we're seeing some weird behavior in the system. Nothing major, just some lag in the analytics pipeline. Frank thinks it's growing pains, but I was wondering if you'd seen anything like this before. Call me back if you can. Please. I deleted the message and made popcorn. This was better than Netflix. By 3:30 p.m., the weird behavior was becoming harder to ignore. Response times had doubled. Dashboard refreshes were taking 10 seconds instead of 1. The real-time analytics that made Pioneer's platform valuable were becoming real-time-ish analytics. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Maggie Cooper? The voice was unfamiliar, professional. This is Maggie. This is Janet Fletcher from Westbridge Capital. I believe you were involved in developing the platform we launched today. My stomach dropped. I was, yes. But I'm no longer with Pioneer Analytics. I know this is highly unusual, she said quietly, and I'm calling you personally before our legal team gets involved. We're experiencing serious performance issues, and frankly, we need someone who understands this system inside and out. Would you be available for an emergency consulting engagement? I almost laughed. Frank had fired me to save money, and now his biggest client was trying to hire me to fix the problems he'd created. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not available for consulting right now. You might want to speak with Pioneer's current development team. We've tried. They seem overwhelmed. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled in for the evening show. The real drama was just beginning. By 4 p.m., the fallout was spreading beyond technical metrics. A trading firm insider had posted on Reddit, anyone else seeing massive lag in the new Pioneer Analytics platform? Lost $50,000 in arbitrage opportunities today. The response was immediate and brutal. Screenshots of error messages flooded social media. Traders were tagging Westbridge Capital directly, demanding answers. Frank's LinkedIn post celebrating the launch was drowning in angry comments. I refreshed my monitoring dashboard. Response times were now approaching a full minute. Death in the trading world. But the real damage was reputational. In finance, trust took years to build and seconds to destroy. My phone buzzed with a text from Cole, emergency board meeting called. Frank's blaming server capacity. Please call me. I poured myself a glass of wine instead. The technical failure was just the beginning. The real catastrophe would be Frank's response to it, and I had a front row seat to watch a master class in how not to handle a crisis. I ignored it and opened a bottle of wine. Lucy was coming over for dinner, and I wanted to celebrate properly. She arrived at 6 p.m. with Thai takeout and a bottle of champagne. So, she said, settling onto my couch, how's the revenge business? Booming, I said, showing her the performance metrics on my laptop. Want to see a $102 million deal slowly dying in real time? We watched the numbers deteriorate while eating pad thai. It was oddly therapeutic. You know what's funny? Lucy said. Frank probably thinks this is bad luck. Random technical difficulties. He has no idea you saw this coming. I didn't just see it coming, I corrected. I warned him about it. 5 times. And now? I raised my glass. Now he gets to learn why you don't fire the person who built your entire platform. But as the evening wore on, I began to feel something unexpected, doubt. Was I taking this too far? People's livelihoods were on the line, not just Frank's ego. Then I remembered the Christmas Eve email. The dismissive wave-off in the board meeting. The way Frank had taken credit for my work. The doubt evaporated like morning mist. I woke up Thursday morning to 17 missed calls and 43 unread messages. The night hadn't been kind to Pioneer Analytics. The first message was from Cole, timestamped 2:47 a.m. Maggie, I know you're probably asleep, but we're in crisis mode. The platform has been intermittently failing since yesterday afternoon. Frank's bringing in every contractor he can find, but nobody understands the architecture like you do. Can we talk? Please? The second was from an unknown number at 3:15 a.m. Ms. Cooper, this is Janet Fletcher from Westbridge Capital. I apologize for the late hour, but we need to discuss the platform's performance issues urgently. We're considering pulling out of the contract if these problems aren't resolved within 48 hours. 48 hours. That was Frank's death sentence. I made coffee and scrolled through the rest of the messages. Most were from Pioneer employees, some pleading, others demanding, all desperate. The overnight shift had been brutal. System crashes, data corruption, angry clients. The local tech news was already picking up the story. Pioneer Analytics struggles with major launch, read the headline in Chicago Business Journal. I was about to close my laptop when a new email arrived. The sender made my blood run cold, Frank Dalton himself. Maggie, I know we parted ways under difficult circumstances, but I need your help. The platform is failing and I don't understand why. Whatever we were paying you, I'll double it. Triple it. Please call me. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Frank Dalton, the man who'd taken credit for my work and fired me on Christmas Eve, was begging for my help. The irony was delicious. But what came next would be even better. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. Cole Bennett again. This time, I answered. Maggie, thank God. Listen, I can't talk long, but I need to warn you about something. Warn me about what? Frank's losing it. The Westbridge deal is falling apart, and he's looking for someone to blame. He's been telling people that you sabotaged the code before you left. My grip tightened on the phone. That's ridiculous. I would never, I know you wouldn't. But Frank's desperate. He's hired a forensic team to examine the codebase. If they find anything at all, he's going to come after you legally. My heart pounded. Could they trace Rudolph back to me? The module was part of the original architecture, approved and reviewed. But in the hands of skilled investigators. Cole, I need you to listen carefully. I never sabotaged anything. The performance issues they're experiencing were documented in my technical reports. I warned Frank about them repeatedly. I know. I was in those meetings. But he's not thinking rationally right now. The entire company is about to collapse. What do you mean? Westbridge is pulling out. They're demanding a full refund of their advance payment, $25 million. If we can't deliver a working platform by Friday, Pioneer is finished. Fra. Encase already started laying people off. The news hit me harder than expected. 47 people, not just Frank, but developers, designers, account managers, the security guard who always asked about my weekend plans. People with mortgages and kids and dreams that had nothing to do with my personal vendetta. Maggie, are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. My voice sounded hollow. Cole, those people losing their jobs, that's not what I wanted. I know. But Maggie, this was going to happen anyway. Frank's been bleeding money for months. The Westbridge deal was a Hail Mary. You didn't cause this, you just accelerated the inevitable. But inevitable felt different than deliberate. I'd made a choice that Christmas Eve, and now 47 families were paying for Frank's bad judgment and my wounded pride. There's something else. Frank's been asking around about you. Your personal life, your finances, your plans. Nothing formal yet. He's being careful. But he's been dropping hints in internal meetings about disgruntled former employees and potential sabotage. I think he's testing the waters before making any official accusations. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Cole said the words that changed everything. Maggie, you need to get a lawyer. Now. Document everything you can about those technical warnings. Frank's building a narrative, and you need to be ready to defend yourself. I hung up with Cole and immediately started packing. If Frank was building a legal case against me, I needed to be smart about my next moves. My first call was to my college roommate, Jessica, who'd become a tech lawyer in San Francisco. I explained the situation without mentioning Rudolph specifically. Maggie, if they're conducting a forensic investigation, you need to document everything. Every email, every meeting note, every technical report where you raised these concerns. Build a paper trail that shows you acted professionally. What if they try to claim I sabotaged the code? Did you? The question hung in the air. Technically, I hadn't added anything malicious. I'd simply chosen not to fix a problem they'd ignored. But would a jury see it that way? I documented security vulnerabilities and performance issues. Management chose not to address them. Then you're protected under whistleblower statutes. But Maggie, if this goes to court, it's going to be ugly. Frank will try to destroy your reputation. After hanging up, I made a decision that would define the next phase of my life. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to fight back. But first, I needed allies. Lucy arrived at my apartment that evening with a bottle of wine and a plan. "I've been thinking," she said, settling onto my couch. "What if we turned this whole disaster into an opportunity?" "What do you mean?" "You know more about analytics platforms than anyone in the city. Pioneer's about to collapse, leaving a gap in the market. What if we started our own company?" I laughed, but it came out bitter. "With what money? What clients? Frank's about to sue me into bankruptcy." "Let him try. You have documentation proving you warned them about these problems. Meanwhile, we build something better." Lucy opened her laptop and showed me a business plan she'd been working on. "I've been researching the market. There's definitely demand for what Pioneer was trying to build, they just executed it poorly. Lucy, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but, Maggie, you're the most talented engineer I know. Don't let Frank Dalton's incompetence convince you otherwise." As I read through her plan, something shifted inside me. Maybe Cole was right about getting out of town. But I didn't have to run away from the tech industry. I could run towards something better. We spent the weekend in Lucy's apartment, sketching out the framework for what would become Northbridge Metrics. The name came from a bridge visible from her kitchen window, a symbol of connecting two sides, of building something that would last. "The key is learning from Pioneer's mistakes," I explained, mapping out the architecture on her whiteboard. "They built a monolithic system that couldn't scale. We'll build modular components that can adapt to different client needs." Lucy focused on the business side. "We need to position ourselves as the anti-Pioneer. Personal service, transparent pricing, no promises we can't keep." By Sunday evening, we had a basic business plan and a minimum viable product design. More importantly, we had something Frank Dalton couldn't take away: hope. Monday morning brought news that Pioneer Analytics had officially lost the Westbridge contract. The tech blogs were calling it the fastest unicorn death in Chicago history. Stock in Pioneer's parent company dropped 30% in pre-market trading. But there was also unexpected news. My phone rang at 9 a.m. with a call from Janet Morrison at Westbridge. "Ms. Cooper, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. We've decided to terminate our contract with Pioneer Analytics, but we're still interested in the concept. Would you be available to discuss developing a custom solution?" My heart raced. I'm actually in the process of starting my own company. We're not ready for a project of that magnitude yet. What would it take to get you ready? The question hung in the air like a challenge. What would it take? Capital, certainly. A team. Office space. Legal protection. "Give me 2 weeks," I heard myself saying. "I'll have a proposal for you." After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. 24 hours ago, I was worried about Frank's legal threats. Now I was potentially negotiating a multi-million-dollar deal with his former client. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. The first person I called was Cole Bennett. He answered on the second ring, sounding exhausted. "Maggie? Thank God. Things here are bad. Frank laid off half the development team this morning. The other half are updating their LinkedIn profiles. Cole, I have a proposition for you." I explained the Northbridge concept and the potential Westbridge opportunity. Cole was quiet for a long moment. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. I need someone I can trust to help build the team. Someone who understands the technical challenges and can manage people. I paused. Cole, I know this is risky for you. You've got the mortgage, the kids' college funds. But I also remember when Frank wanted to scrap your database optimization project, and I went to bat for you. Sometimes loyalty runs both ways. When do we start? Tomorrow. But Cole, there's something you need to know. Frank's probably going to try to sue me. If you come work for me, you'll be caught in the crossfire. Maggie, I've been watching Frank destroy everything you built. If he wants a war, I'm on your side. The next call was harder. I needed seed funding, and I had exactly one person in mind, my former mentor, Dr. Patricia Vance, who taught me systems architecture at Northwestern and now ran a venture capital fund. Maggie Cooper, she said when I reached her. I've been reading about the Pioneer situation. Sounds like a nightmare. It's been challenging. But I think there's an opportunity here. I pitched the Northbridge concept and mentioned the Westbridge interest. Patricia listened without interrupting. You know, I don't typically invest in companies founded by former employees of failed startups, she said finally. Too much legal risk, too much emotional baggage. And the Pioneer situation is messy. My heart sank. But, she continued, I also know you're one of the most talented engineers I've ever taught. Here's what I need, a bulletproof business plan, legal clearance on the intellectual property issues, and a clear differentiation strategy. Prove to me this isn't just revenge wrapped in a business model. How long do I have? 2 weeks. If you can address those concerns, we'll talk numbers. But Maggie. One whiff of vindictiveness or legal trouble, and I'm out. After hanging up, I realized I was building more than a company. I was building a rebellion against everything Frank Dalton represented, the ego, the short-term thinking, the willingness to throw people away for convenience. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about proving that talent and integrity could triumph over politics and greed. 2 weeks later, I walked into Westbridge Capital's Chicago office carrying a leather portfolio and a proposal that had consumed every waking hour since Frank's betrayal. Janet Fletcher greeted me in the lobby, professional but curious. I have to admit, Ms. Cooper, when you said you were starting your own company, I didn't expect you to move this quickly. Desperation is a powerful motivator. The conference room was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, a massive table that could seat 20 people, and 5 Westbridge executives who looked skeptical about betting on a 3-person startup. I opened with honesty. 2 weeks ago, you experienced what happens when a company prioritizes marketing over engineering. I'm here to propose a 6-month development partnership, not a replacement system, but a proof of concept that addresses Pioneer's fundamental flaws. The next hour was the most important presentation of my life. I walked them through Northbridge's architecture, explained our modular approach, and demonstrated how we would avoid the scalability issues that had destroyed Pioneer. The key difference, I explained, is that we're building for reliability first, features second. Your data is your most valuable asset. We won't risk it for marketing headlines. The questions came fast and sharp. How could a 3-person startup handle their volume? What about security? What about support? I answered each one with technical precision, but also with something Pioneer had never offered, honesty about limitations and realistic timelines. Then came the question I'd been dreading. A silver-haired executive leaned forward. Ms. Cooper, let's address the elephant in the room. You built the platform that catastrophically failed at Pioneer. Why should we trust you after that disaster? I took a breath. Because I'm the person who tried to prevent that disaster. I documented the performance risks in multiple reports. I requested time to fix the issues. Management chose to ignore those warnings and terminate me instead. This time, I won't be overruled on technical decisions. Finally, Janet asked her own pointed question, Ms. Cooper, how do we know this isn't just about revenge against your former employer? Because revenge would be trying to destroy Frank's next venture. Building something better than what he threw away, that's just good business. The room fell silent. Then Janet smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. How soon can you start? March 15, 2024. 3 months after Christmas Eve, and 2 months into our proof-of-concept development phase with Westbridge. Patricia Vance had come through with initial funding, not the $2 million I'd hoped for, but $400,000 to prove the concept and build a minimal viable product. "Show me traction," she'd said. "Prove this isn't just revenge wrapped in a business plan." Westbridge had signed a modest development contract worth $300,000 over 6 months. We'd hired 6 employees, all refugees from Pioneer's collapse who understood exactly what we were building and why it mattered. Our office was a converted co-working space in Pilsen, with mismatched IKEA furniture and a coffee machine that required percussive maintenance. But the code we were writing was elegant, scalable, and, most importantly, honest about its limitations. "You know what's different about this place?" Lucy said, debugging our client dashboard. "We're not promising the moon. We're just building something that actually works." "You know what's funny?" Lucy said, hanging up inspirational posters in the break room. "Frank spent millions on interior design to make Pioneer look successful. We're building something that actually is successful." The irony wasn't lost on me. While Frank fought lawsuits and layoffs, we were building the platform he dreamed of but couldn't execute. My phone buzzed with a text from Cole, "Check TechCrunch. Pioneer's officially filing for bankruptcy." I opened the article on my laptop. "Pioneer Analytics shuts down after failed launch," read the headline. The article detailed the company's spectacular collapse, the Westbridge contract termination, and Frank's failed attempts to blame disgruntled former employees for the technical failures. Near the end, there was a quote from Frank: "This was clearly sabotage by someone with intimate knowledge of our systems. We're exploring all legal options." I forwarded the article to my lawyer with a note: "Let him try." But as I read the article, I felt something unexpected: sympathy. Frank was a flawed leader who'd made terrible decisions, but he was still a human being who'd lost everything. The satisfaction of revenge was fading, replaced by something better, the satisfaction of building something new. April brought cherry blossoms and an unexpected visitor to our office. I was deep in code review when Lucy knocked on my door. "Maggie, there's someone here to see you. Says he's from Pioneer Analytics." My blood ran cold. Had Frank finally decided to confront me directly? But the man waiting in our lobby wasn't Frank. It was Cole's replacement at Pioneer, a nervous-looking developer named Tom Fisher who'd been hired just before the collapse. "Ms. Cooper, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to ask you about something." I led him to a conference room and closed the door. "What can I do for you, Tom?" "I've been analyzing the Pioneer codebase for the bankruptcy proceedings," Tom said, looking genuinely puzzled. I was expecting to find malicious code, that's what Frank told the investigators to look for. But instead, I found something else. He pulled out a tablet and showed me a detailed analysis. "There's this module called Rudolph that caused the performance issues. But here's the weird part, it's not sabotage. It's actually legitimate code with a documented purpose. A fail-safe mechanism." I kept my expression neutral. "Okay. The thing is, I can see from the commit history that you tried to address this multiple times. There are 5 different bug reports filed by you about performance under high load." Frank marked every one as "defer to post-launch." Tom shook his head, looking frustrated. I came here thinking I'd prove Frank's sabotage theory. Instead, I found evidence that you tried to prevent this disaster and management ignored you. The question hung in the air like a sword. Tom's eyes were earnest, not accusatory. He genuinely wanted to understand. "Tom, I documented performance concerns in multiple reports. I warned management about potential issues during high-load scenarios. They chose not to address those concerns. But you didn't fix this specific issue?" "I wasn't given the opportunity. I was terminated before I could complete the optimization work." Tom nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. The module isn't sabotage, it's just unfinished work. Frank's been telling people you deliberately sabotage the system, but the code tells a different story. What are you going to do with this information? I'm going to tell the truth. You tried to prevent this disaster, and they fired you for it. After Tom left, I sat in my office for a long time, processing what had just happened. The truth was coming out, but it was more complex than simple revenge or simple justice. I'd made a choice to leave a problem unfixed, knowing it would cause failures. The question was whether that choice was justified by Frank's treatment of me and his dismissal of my warnings. I still wasn't sure I had a good answer. May brought vindication in the form of a detailed report from the bankruptcy trustee investigating Pioneer's collapse. Tom Fisher had been true to his word. His analysis clearly showed that the technical failures were caused by documented issues that management had ignored. The report was damning. Pioneer Analytics' failure was not the result of sabotage, but rather a systematic disregard for engineering best practices and technical warnings from senior development staff. Frank's legal threats evaporated overnight. He couldn't sue me for failing to fix problems he'd refused to let me address. But vindication came with a price. The tech community was small, and my role in Pioneer's collapse was an open secret. Some people viewed me as a hero who'd stood up to bad management. Others saw me as a vindictive employee who'd let her personal grievances destroy a company. Does it matter what they think? Lucy asked during one of our evening strategy sessions. You're building something amazing here. She was right. Northbridge was thriving. Our platform was approaching beta testing, and Westbridge was thrilled with our progress. We'd already received inquiries from 3 other potential clients. But the cost of success was complicated. 47 people had lost their jobs when Pioneer collapsed. Some had found new positions quickly, but others were still struggling. I'd set up a quiet fund to help former Pioneer employees with their job searches, but it didn't erase the guilt I felt about the collateral damage of my revenge. You know what Frank's problem was? Cole said during a team meeting. He thought talent was disposable. He thought he could fire the people who built his company and just hire replacements. And now? Now he's learned that some things can't be replaced. Some people are irreplaceable. As I looked around the room at our team, brilliant engineers and creatives who'd chosen to follow me into uncertainty, I realized Cole was right. Frank had thought he could discard me and keep my work. Instead, he'd lost both. Building something better had become my answer to his betrayal. October 4, 2024. 10 months after Christmas Eve, and the day Northbridge Metrics signed our first major production contract. The signing ceremony was held in our new office. We'd finally outgrown the Pilsen co-working space and moved to a proper suite in River North. Patricia Vance was there representing our Series A round, $3.2 million raised over 6 months. And Janet Fletcher represented Westbridge's expanded partnership. The contract was for $2.8 million over 18 months, a fraction of what Pioneer had promised, but built on demonstrated performance rather than flashy demos. You know, Janet said as we shook hands, your proof of concept taught us something important. We don't need the fastest analytics platform in the world. We need the most reliable one. The platform we'd built was methodical rather than revolutionary. Every feature was tested extensively. Every promise was backed by documentation. We'd learned the hard way that sustainable growth beat explosive promises. The platform we'd built was elegant and robust, with none of the architectural flaws that had doomed Pioneer. More importantly, it was built by a team that understood the value of technical excellence over flashy marketing. As the champagne flowed and the team celebrated, I found myself thinking about Frank. According to industry gossip, he'd taken a job with a mid-sized consulting firm in Milwaukee. His dreams of tech stardom had died with Pioneer, but he was rebuilding his life one client at a time. I felt no satisfaction in his fall. Success had taught me that revenge was a hollow victory compared to the joy of creating something meaningful. Penny for your thoughts? Lucy asked, joining me on the office balcony as fireworks lit up the Chicago skyline. Just thinking about how different things could have been. You mean if Frank hadn't fired you? Maybe. Or if I'd handled things differently. If I'd been more patient, more diplomatic. Lucy was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. Frank showed you who he really was, and you showed him who you really were. And what am I? Someone who refuses to be disposable. Someone who turns betrayal into opportunity. As the fireworks reached their crescendo, I realized Lucy was right. The Christmas Eve email that had seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of something better. Sometimes the best gift you can receive is the gift of clarity. The moment when someone shows you exactly who they are and forces you to decide who you want to be. 1 year later, Northbridge Metrics employed 19 people and had proven that slow, honest growth could compete with venture capital theatrics. We'd built something Frank could never have imagined, a company that prioritized sustainability over spectacle. The industry had taken notice, but the real victory was quieter and more complex. I'd learned that revenge was a double-edged gift. It had motivated me to build something meaningful, but it came with a cost I was still paying. I'd set up a quiet fund to help former Pioneer employees transition to new roles. It didn't erase my role in their displacement, but it acknowledged that my choices had consequences beyond Frank's bruised ego. On Christmas Eve, exactly 2 years after Frank's email, I gathered our team for our annual holiday party. As I looked around the room at the 19 people who'd chosen to join our mission, I felt something I'd never experienced at Pioneer, responsibility that went beyond personal satisfaction. I want to thank you all for an incredible year, I said, raising my glass. 2 years ago, I thought my career was over. Today, I realize it was just beginning. But more importantly, we've built something that puts people before politics. I want to thank you all for an incredible year, I said, raising my glass. 2 years ago, I thought my career was over. Today, I realize it was just beginning. The applause was warm and genuine. These people believed in what we were building because they'd helped build it. After the party, I walked to my car through the snowy streets of downtown Chicago, carrying the same coffee mug I'd grabbed from my Pioneer desk that final day, world's best coder, faded but still readable. My phone buzzed with a text from Cole, saw the Forbes article. Congratulations, boss. You earned it. I smiled and looked up at the snowflakes falling through the streetlight, just like they had 2 years ago when I'd watched from my Pioneer office window. But this time, I wasn't the one being discarded. This time, I was the one in control. Frank Dalton had thought he was firing me. Instead, he'd taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Sometimes the people who try to throw you away end up handing you exactly what you need to build something better. The best revenge, it turned out, wasn't destroying your enemies. It was building something so successful, so undeniably better, that their betrayal became the catalyst for your greatest triumph. Sometimes the people who try to break you end up building you instead. You just have to know how to use the pieces. So what do you think? Have you ever been in Maggie's shoes? Fired by someone who couldn't function without you? Or maybe you've seen that the Frank Daltons of the corporate world get their comeuppance. Drop your own workplace revenge stories in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story of corporate karma hit home, smash that like button and share it with anyone who's ever felt undervalued at work. And hey, if you want more stories like this, tales of justice, revenge, and people who refuse to stay down, subscribe to my channel and ring that notification bell. Trust me, I've got plenty more where this came from. Until next time, remember, sometimes getting fired isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of your legend.